Welcome to Stinging Back. I'm A,
And I'm M. Tonight we're also joined by C.
and today is the second part of last week's episode. So, last week we covered the trailer to a documentary that is called The Predators. It covers Chris Hansen's sting operations. And then after that, we began to comment on an actual Chris Hansen sting operation that was conducted in Polk County, Florida. This is part two of last week's episode.
Coming up on Takedown with Chris Hansen.
Because there's something, Ferris, you need to know. I'm Chris Hansen.
Please help me.
How can I help you?
Okay, so I'm quite familiar with this story. And so right there when he says, please help me, what they did not show is they physically assaulted him. Well, they did show there where they like pushed him down to the ground and stuff, but they actually like they beat him up as well, and they didn't show that. And he doesn't know what's going on. He was on the Scout app where you have to be 18 or maybe 19 or older. And this profile was of a 19-year-old, and he didn't even mean to click on them. But on the Scout, if you're like scrolling and you accidentally tap on someone's profile, it'll automatically send a hi to that person. And so he accidentally, as he was scrolling, it sent hi to that profile, and they responded immediately. So, of course, that caught his attention because they responded immediately. That's not common. And engaged them in conversation. And they wanted to meet up. And of course, they steered the conversation to sex. He was not looking for sex, but they were. So he played into it. And then they claimed to be 14, and he didn't believe it. He kept wanting to video chat with them. They kept coming up with excuses for it. And then they do video chat, but they're trying to hide their face. And he's trying to clarify, like, okay, call me on this other app or something. I'm not sure, but they were going back and forth because he really wanted to see this person, what they look like. And eventually he does see them, and it's an adult woman. He sees it's an adult woman. This is someone who's pushing for sex, so she's clearly not acting like a 14-year-old. And just like he says it in the video, I didn't believe she was 14. And of course, Chris Hansen wants to, and this guy said, Chris Hansen was getting frustrated with him because he kept telling him like he didn't believe this was a 14-year-old, or he wasn't playing along with Chris Hansen's narrative, as we'll see in this video. And Chris Hansen was getting very angry about that.
I have to reflect on, knowing what we know now, someone who's just watching that, of course, is going to take Chris Hansen's side. But you don't realize all the things that has been hidden from you, what built up to it, what they're hiding at the time. Is this one of the cases where Hansen was being sued because he wasn't handing over exculpatory evidence? And again, exculpatory evidence is something that may help defend someone or prove innocence.
Well, in this case, was missing that exculpatory evidence, the video where they showed him an adult woman. They conveniently did not have that video. And also, when this man showed up at that location, that same adult woman that he video chatted with, that he saw through video chat, that same adult woman walked out there. He saw it was an adult woman. He confirmed it was an adult woman. He gets out of the car and they physically attacked them.
You can tell this is very heavily edited. It's not telling the whole story, and you can. If you're someone that's not familiar with these cases, it's easy to get caught up in the storytelling of the editing, but that's mostly what it is. It's in the editing. It's not actually reflecting all of the events that actually happened here.
Yeah, and this man was denied the entrapment defense, even though he did not believe it was a real 14-year-old because he saw it was an adult woman, and he confirmed when he arrived that it was an adult woman, not a 14-year-old. He was denied the entrapment defense. They said it was not entrapment because he was told this was a 14-year-old, and because he played along with that role for a bit, even though he knew very well this was not a 14-year-old or likely to be a 14-year-old, because this 14-year-old was very aggressive in pushing sex on him. when he wasn't even looking for sex. She was. He was just entertaining her with what she wanted the conversation to be about. But of course, they don't show that.
Only a small portion of our episodes are on YouTube. There are more than 100 episodes on our streaming service, ad-free and uncensored at watchtrueblue.com.
It's about the money.
I joined the Polk County Sheriff's Office for Operation Child Protector 4. The detectives posing as underage girls and boys on various social media platforms are busy.
He's a 49-year-old male from Orlando, Florida. We're basically traveling here to meet with a 14-year-old girl.
So they make it sound like it's absolutely certain that this person knew they were underage, and he was going to meet underage girl, but that's not necessarily a fact.
Well, I've read the chat, and it's very clear that he's very confused about this, and he's not believing it, and that's why he wants the video chat, and they are the ones directing the conversation, telling him to go to Snap and to other apps like that. So yeah, it's very dishonest. So I guess this guy here was a decoy, huh? And
that's what we commented earlier about the terminology and phrases that people may use. Him saying that the suspect has been very cryptic.
He was being persistent on, I need to see you. I need to see what you look like, because he did not believe this was a 14-year-old. And when he says, oh, he found out she was a virgin, that was him playing along with her role play. He said, oh, are you a virgin? That was him making fun of her role play. And they turned it into, oh, and then he finds out that she's a virgin. Well, she's saying I'm 14, and she's being very aggressive about, pushing sex on him. She created a profile on an adult hookup site, and she's pushing sex on this random stranger. And so are you, and she says she's 14. Are you a virgin? That's playing into her fantasy about, I'm 14 and here I am and I don't know you, but I really want to meet you to have sex with you. That's role playing. That's
right.
Not...
Instead of being honest, instead of the detective being honest about the conversation, he says, oh, he's being very cryptic.
Well, cryptic is what the detective was being, or this decoy, whoever he is.
Yeah, exactly.
His wife should be ashamed of him. Apparently he's married. I see the wedding band. Oh, yeah. And notice they said various social media sites or something that they were posting on. They didn't specify that this was an adult hookup site. This was not a site where any minor would be. This was on Scout. Anybody can go to Scout and see what it takes to create a profile on Scout. You have to be an adult. That's not a place anyone would expect to find a minor, much less a 14-year-old who was seeking random adult male strangers to demand sex from them and invite them over to have sex with her.
Yeah, and it's very common on these adult sites to find people that are wanting to role play. So it's not unusual for people to say insane things about who they are. If you're saying something crazy, or if you run across someone saying something crazy, it's oftentimes they just want to be role playing that character. It's not that they're saying that they actually are whatever it is. I've encountered people that are wanting to be horses and mythical creatures. That doesn't mean that they actually are horses and mythical creatures on these apps. So, it's just...
And to play along with them doesn't mean that you actually wanted to have sex with a horse or with a mythical creature.
Exactly.
And a 14-year-old who's looking for sex with random adult strangers is a mythical creature.
Yeah.
I review the text messages between him and who he believes is a 14-year-old girl. If she wants to meet up, and if she wants to go somewhere. The chatter reveals that she's 14. He acknowledges her age of only 14 over and over again. He then goes on to ask if she's a virgin and gets very graphic about what he'd like to do to the 14-year-old girl.
Notice how they kept showing his text messages, but they did not show what they were texting him. That's all.
Well, I doubt that it's even the actual conversation.
It's part of it.
Sitting with the screen and typing on the screen. It's not the actual conversation.
Well, no, it actually is, because I have seen this actual chat log. It's just taken out of context and it's missing a lot of information. And this was after he confirmed that this was an adult. This was after they video chatted and he confirmed that this was an adult that insisted on pretending to be a naughty little 14-year-old who wanted to meet this 49-year-old man to, for sexual purposes. So that's what they're not showing. That's what they're leaving out.
Yeah.
Yeah, and from the way he's responding, even in the clip they showed there, it sounds like he's kind of playing along with the role play. It's not that he actually thinks this person is 14,
County sheriff's deputies quickly surround him and take him into custody.
I was in this app and I saw the picture was 19 years old, wherever. And I asked her to call because, too many scams over there.
Scams online, yeah.
I don't know.
What do you do for a living?
Uber in my car.
Uber.
So a thought that jumped in my head, the old Philip K. Dick, what is that movie that Tom Cruise did with the twins that can see the future and possibilities of crimes that happen? The title of the movie just slipped my mind. But anyways, in that, it's that they see the possibility of someone committing a crime, so the police team is sent out there to arrest the person before that crime is committed. And they're convicted and they're, sent to jail when they really haven't committed a crime yet. It's because these psychic twins have seen the potential of them committing a crime.
Yeah, Minority Report.
Stings, Minority Report. But in these stings, he is saying he wanted verification. He didn't believe that she was 14.
This is clear evidence that he did not believe she was 14. And the government still says, oh, he knew she was 14. Okay, she was on an adult hookup site. She was very eager to meet whatever man she could find, engage him in sexual conversation, and give him her address to come over and have sex with her. That's just not developmentally appropriate for a 14-year-old. A 14-year-old is going through like an identity crisis. They're figuring out themselves, their own sexuality, how to flirt with boys or whatever. But the last thing they want to do is to just go have sex with a random stranger. It's a huge deal to even have sex if anybody's even thinking about sex at that age, especially any child who has been sexually abused. The last thing they would want to do is, go find a random stranger to have sex with. It's a really wild fantasy for Chris Hansen to create and to say, that 14-year-olds can somehow turn into sex freaks that just have this great desire for sex, that they're going to go on an adult hookup site and find whatever random adult man they can find, that's looking for a sexual hookup and volunteer to meet that man for sex. Shame on Chris Hansen.
In Ferris's defense, Chris Hansen is obviously getting frustrated with what Ferris is saying.
Oh, Chris Hansen is angry because Chris Hansen is not, participating in his narrative. And Chris Hansen is the real monster here. Ferris was taken away from his special needs child who was very attached to him, who needs him. And people don't care about that. And Chris Hansen is the last one to care about, causing real harm to real families. Ferris is from Syria. His first language is not English. It's his second language. And he's actually limited in English. He speaks Arabic. And so a lot of it also had to do with interpretation.
There's so many layers to these. He never got the chance to prove whether or not he was really going to do what they are saying he was going to do.
And in court, they denied him an interpreter. On top of that, that's a right he had. He should have had an interpreter because, the culture and the language is different. This was not fair to him at all.
Yeah, that's the thing. These cases go to trial, and everything he just said, the jury will never hear. It's just the way these cases go.
Yeah, they have to hide exculpatory evidence.
Yep.
You talked about sex with this girl.
Because honestly, I don't know exactly because she's confused me. And I
Look
thought
at
like
Chris
she's
Hansen, he's
19
pissed.
because that's what now. And she's like, she opened, that's why I asked her to call me like, I want to see her in the video because when I looked at her face, she's not look like 14, you know what I mean?
Right.
People in this app, they not like, they always lie. They always like, that's most of these people over
But
there.
why even mess around with it?
You see how he keeps them confused? He's clearly saying she was an adult. Of course, Hansen is completely disregarding the fact that she posed as an adult to begin with, and she was clearly acting like an adult. That's part of the game. He wants to keep this poor man confused. He wants to keep the audience confused. And when he's telling Ferris, like 14, why didn't you just leave it alone? Okay, a real 14-year-old would be the one leaving that alone. A real 14-year-old, if a man starts talking sexually to her online, she'll be like, yeah, I'm out, and block him. She's not going to say, oh, yes. Oh, okay, yes. I'm going to shower now. When are you coming over? Please bring over some condoms and let me know when you're here and tell me more about what you're going to do to me. And here's my address. Okay, that right there shows that that's not a real 14-year-old, because a real 14-year-old would be like, oh, this guy's a creep, and she would block him. And this BS they keep feeding, well, some children are sexually abused and they want attention. They want attention, not sex, Chris Hansen.
Yeah,
This man.
one thing that Chris Hansen also said was, why didn't you just leave it alone if you thought it was such a mess? And that's something that I've heard a lot as well. And I think it's a very strange thing to say. Like, if you see something unusual out on the street, maybe you leave it alone, but maybe you also investigate, try to figure out what's going on. It's a pretty normal human reaction to just try to figure out what's going on. It's curiosity. And especially as an adult, and especially as an adult male, we're kind of expected to, look into things, figure out what's happening, and not just leave things alone if something strange is happening. So it's a very strange thing to say, but that Chris Hansen said. But you hear it all the time from people in law enforcement and in the criminal justice system.
Well, yeah, and yeah, his reaction is very normal. And it's not normal to think that it's normal that a 14-year-old would be soliciting random adult strangers for sex. So to say, why didn't you just leave it alone? It's like, oh, well, Ferris, you should just know that, some 14-year-olds are sex freaks and go online seeking adult strangers to have sex with. So you should know that, Ferris. You should know to just leave that alone. That's pretty much what Chris Hansen is saying. If you really think about it.
So also to look at the situation, Chris Hansen, he makes his living doing this. And Ferris, this is the first situation like this he's ever been in. His nerves are a mess. He's in shock. He's hurting. He's confused. So he's not able to give direct, strong, firm answers. Unfortunately, Ferris wasn't in a situation where he could look at Chris Hansen and say, you know what? I knew it was adult. I knew she was an adult. I knew she was playing a game. Because of his nerves, and he's trying to be compliant in the situation, he's not given the opportunity to really speak his mind.
Well, and he's shooken up, right? Like he was just physically assaulted and held at gunpoint and made to fear for his life. And now you're questioning him. The man is confused. He doesn't know what's going on. And Chris Hansen is exploiting that situation. The real monster here is Chris Hansen. He is the real predator. He is the one that causes real harm to real people.
So you're married and you have a 21-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
And so how would you feel, Ferris, if somebody was talking to your daughter online?
I will never even if she asked me, okay, can I do? I said no, because you are a virgin, I will not do says because you're a virgin, I will not do that.
So what were you going to do?
Honestly, I don't know. I will tell you. I don't know. I don't know what to say. I hope
Well,
my
and so
family, they will not
here's
know
another
because
point right there. He doesn't know because, some benefit of the doubt, and which is never given in any of these situations. What if he had walked up to the porch and seen that it was a real 14-year-old?
Yeah, but
He
actually he
could have
drove
walked
up.
away.
Actually,
He
he
could have
drove
walked
up
away
and
and
saw that
said,
it
you
was
know
an
what?
adult.
Yeah, I thought you were an adult. I'm leaving.
Yeah, he was never given that opportunity.
Yeah, and it could be if there was an actual 14-year-old there, he could have been willing to go up and talk to her and be like, "Hey, you shouldn't be doing this." And especially coming from if he said he was from Syria, I mean, he's probably not going to trust the police all that much. You know,
Or even this culture. He didn't,
yeah,
his culture is different too. He didn't understand, like, is this an American thing on hookup sites? This is how they, role play. He didn't understand what was going on. And he wasn't looking to meet anybody for sex. So he's saying, I don't know. He had a habit of going on there and chatting with women. That is true. And Chris Hansen is totally exploiting this. And because he knows this man already feels bad because of what he was doing, right? He is married and he does have a family. He already feels bad about that. He's just been held at gunpoint and had his life threatened. He doesn't know what's going to happen next. He's terrified. And Chris Hansen, the real predator, is totally exploiting the situation.
You're going to take a 14-year-old girl for a ride?
no,
in
no,
your
but
car?
not 14. I swear to God. Yeah, she said 14. You want? Okay,
Okay, I know, but you're talking in circles here, and she said she was 14.
Yeah, but
She said she was 14. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes or
She
no?
also
Okay, yes.
solicited him for sex. Yes or no? Did she that's what, if somebody that was there telling the truth, every time Chris Hansen says she was 14, yes, she also was soliciting random adult strangers for sex. That's the part the audience is not getting. And when Ferris says his illness, of course they exploit that and say, "Oh, pedophilia, he's a pedophile." No, he has ADHD and he is bipolar. That's what he is talking about when he talks about his illness. And so at the time Ferris did this, he was probably, in a bipolar is where you have like really low lows and really high highs. He might have been in one of those manic states. I don't know. But I do know he has that, and that's what he is talking about when he says his illness.
But when I look at her face, she's not 14.
That's not
why
your
I thought
call to make. Once she says she's 14, you need to accept that and not get involved. But you came over, and you see how this looks, right? You see how this looks.
Yes,
and 14-year-old girls can look older, but if somebody tells you they're 14, they're 14.
14 is baby, you know what I mean?
14 is a baby.
Yeah.
And you came over here to have sex with a baby.
No, I will not do it with the baby. Of course not.
So you guys see what he's saying? 14 is a baby. So he's saying if she were 14, she would look like a 14-year-old because 14 is a baby. I saw this woman, and that was not a 14-year-old. And so Chris Hansen is probably taking this as 14. Yeah, you're admitting that 14 is a baby, and here you are trying to have sex with a baby. But what he's meaning is, I saw the woman. Yeah, she might have said she was 14, but 14 is a baby. I looked at her and clearly saw that she was an adult, not a baby, not a 14-year-old. And Chris Hansen is talking around in circles.
Yeah, something else that we kind of lose track a little bit when we're watching these things. At the start, he was interviewing a male detective with a long bushy beard about the conversation. So Ferris is also, how much did he really talk to that female decoy? Just the video, really, as far as we know. Otherwise, it's been a 40-plus-year-old detective, sheriff, that's been running the conversation.
Yeah, I think he was the one texting, but then they got an adult woman when they were video chatting because, of course, like he said, he didn't believe it was a 14-year-old, so he wanted to see her, and they kept playing games with him, but he finally did see her, and he's saying it over and over again. I saw her. She was not 14 because 14 is a baby, and this was clearly not a 14-year-old.
Yeah, and Chris Hansen saying that, she said she was 14, so you just have to believe that. that's insane thing to say, especially when you're talking to people on the internet. You don't just believe whatever someone says on the internet. That's crazy.
Well,
Yeah,
especially on hookup sites.
Up until that point, he's probably believing, oh, this is actually a 40-year-old guy with a beard.
Yeah, exactly.
For all he knew, it was an overweight 40-year-old guy with a beard pretending to be a 14-year-old. And then he sees the video and goes, oh, it's an adult woman. Good.
Well, yeah, and even the fact that they claim to be 19 to begin with, because their profile said 19, even that is not likely to be an actual 19-year-old. It's likely to be a much older woman. But, they make themselves younger because they just like to play that fantasy. And men are supposed to like younger women. And so they play that role. And, at the time, it didn't occur to Ferris, but not only he is clearly saying she wasn't, I saw her, she wasn't 14, but she was also not acting like a 14-year-old. And he says 14's a baby. Yeah, she would have looked like a baby. She would have also been acting like a child, not like a sex freak. And this person was acting like a sex freak. That's an adult thing. A 14-year-old does not have the capability or the sexual confidence or the sexual desire to be aggressively pushing sex on a 14-year-old. So Chris Hansen, he's the one with the pedophile mind, trying to convince this man that, because she told you she was 14 and who, doesn't matter that she was aggressively pushing sex on you and inviting you to meet for sex. You should just know, that you should say no to these 14-year-old sex freaks who want to meet you for sex. That's pretty much what Chris Hansen is saying. And I'm sorry to have to say it that way, but it has to be said that way in order for the audience to really understand what Chris Hansen has done.
Yeah, exactly. Chris Hansen is really playing this up for the cameras and the audience. He knows his audience. He knows how to play things up to the camera. And so anything this other guy said, that Ferris actually says, doesn't really matter because Chris Hansen's going to distort it and make it look good for the camera.
And that's what they do in the trials, too.
Yes.
You were told a 14-year-old girl was home alone.
Well, after when she called me, when I saw her face, that's why I act with her because I know she's lying to me. She's not 14.
How do you know that, though? See, that's the part of the story that doesn't make sense. If somebody tells you they're 14, then you have to say, okay, that's not a good idea. I'm not going to come over.
I will tell you something.
Okay, he just said it doesn't make sense because she told you she's 14. Okay, no, it does not make sense that he was shown an adult woman, that he was shown the behavior of an adult. This was someone aggressively pursuing sex with an adult stranger that they had just met. That doesn't make sense. But of course, the focus is not on that. And so Chris Hansen is totally gaslighting this guy and totally gaslighting the audience. And I don't know, that grown man that played decoy, I don't think he's, that's not someone who can easily be groomed and manipulated. He knows damn well what he was doing too. It's probably part of his own fantasy as well. That's my guess.
I believe when I saw her picture, she's 19, the same what she said in the ad.
There are a dozen different reasons why what you did tonight was wrong. There are a dozen reasons why this was not just a bad idea, but also illegal.
So he's saying that there's a dozen things that were wrong and those things that are illegal. That's not actually true. Be very clear about that.
Exactly. Ferris what he was doing was lawful conduct. He was on an adult hookup site, scrolling through, and then engaged in a conversation with somebody who was very eager to talk to him. Chris Hansen and his group turned the situation illegal by presenting an imaginary minor into that sexual situation for the purpose of turning this illegal.
Yeah, they're trying to induce a crime here, which
they created the crime. He was, if they had just stuck to I'm 19, there is no crime. They said I'm 14 for the purpose of creating a crime. And remember, they were supposed to be protecting children from online predators. Ferris was not looking for children. He was in an adult place, in the right place for what he was looking for. This has absolutely nothing to do with trying to protect children because no child would have ever approached him demanding sex from him. the way Chris Hansen and his team did to him.
Didn't wrong, but I swear that's what happened in my mind. But I didn't say I didn't write. You know what I mean?
So you would not have had sex or some sort of sexual contact with this girl. What if she was here and she was 14 and she offered to give you oral sex?
No.
Oh, there's Chris Hansen's fantasy.
Yeah.
There is Chris Hansen's fantasy. What if she was here, a 14-year-old, and she offered to give you oral sex? Because, of course, that's just what 14-year-old girls do. They meet this random stranger and, oh, I just want to give you oral sex. Sicko, Chris Hansen.
It's crazy.
So it's time to tell him who I am.
Okay, now you're in trouble. On a couple of different levels, because there's something, Ferris, you need to know. I'm Chris Hansen, and I do stories about men who try to meet kids online for sex. And now you're in one of those stories. That's what all these cameras are for.
So I just want to mention really quick, Chris Hansen does not do stories about men who want to meet kids online for sex. He tries to pose as a minor online, right? He tries to create it. He doesn't actually study any actual victims of sex abuse. He doesn't study any real cases where predators are involved. So that's a total fabrication and a lie. He might believe it himself, but it's not true.
Well, and if he cannot tell the difference between a fantasy, the fantasies he's created in his head about children, about minors, and reality, the reality of how real minors act and don't act, then he's the one that presents a true danger to children, because these fantasies that he's created and is out there promoting, oh, Ferris, what if it was a 14-year-old here that offered you oral sex? That's a very wild sexual fantasy that Chris Hansen created right there on the spot. A 14-year-old girl wants to offer oral sex to a random stranger she just met online. That's what the focus needs to be on. That shows you Chris Hansen has the mind of a pedophile. I don't know if he's acted on it with actual minors, but that shows us what is on Chris Hansen's mind, and he is projecting that onto Ferris. Ferris did not go looking for a minor for sexual purposes. Ferris did not create the fantasy. Ferris certainly did not go around promoting any sexual fantasies about minors and then justifying them. This is all Chris Hansen. So the focus needs to be on Chris Hansen's behavior. I would like to count how many times Ferris said, I did not believe this was a minor. And that's very logical. He had every reason to not believe this was a minor because this was a sex freak. There is no such thing as any minors who are sex freaks. That is Chris Hansen's wild sexual fantasies about minors. That's what that's really about.
Yeah, with the Predators documentary, the director does talk about the perception that we have with To Catch a Predator and Chris Hansen. So I think he does go kind of deep into what's wrong with that.
Well, I'm glad, and I'm looking forward to seeing that. But he does, I mean, he really should talk to people like us that know the whole other side about it and present the whole other side as well. Because, I mean, it is very common that, real predators hide in plain sight. And we could very well be looking at one, not the man on the screen right now, but the other one. Like, we don't know that. Maybe this is his cover up and he's hiding in plain sight. I don't know that. I don't want to make false accusations. I'm just saying from his behavior, from what we have seen, we know what is in the mind of that man. And that man, Chris Hansen, has spent a lot of time creating sexual fantasies about minors and promoting them, projecting them onto other men, pretending like other men are the ones who are having these fantasies about minors. It's not. It's Chris Hansen.
Anything else you want to say, Ferris?
Please help me.
Please help. How can I help you?
I don't know. I swear, please. I don't know. Please. Will destroy my family.
Okay, so here, he didn't realize that Chris Hansen was a bad guy. He thought the guys that assaulted him when he arrived there were the bad guys. He didn't realize that Chris Hansen knew about that and was in on it. He thought Chris Hansen was probably clueless about that and just came out to talk to him like maybe he had been fooled about this. So that's why he's saying, please help me. Because he didn't realize that Chris is the ringleader of this evilness that's going on here. And that's why he said, please help me. Because he's basically like, please help me, protect me from these evil guys who just assaulted me. Anyway,
yeah, that makes sense to me.
I noticed earlier when Chris Hansen said who he was, the way he said it was like we were supposed to know who he is, and of course as an audience we do. But I was like this guy. Before I was arrested, I had no idea who Chris Hansen was. I don't watch that kind of TV. So he says like, I'm Chris Hansen, like that's supposed to mean something to this guy. It doesn't. He has no idea who he is.
Yeah, and this guy is from another country. He came to the US as an adult, right? So he doesn't know who Chris Hansen is. He doesn't he's limited in the understanding of the culture and even in the language. And so yeah, he has no idea. He thought Chris Hansen was a good guy.
Yeah.
He didn't realize till later that he is the main evil one behind all this.
I can't help you. That's the problem. Please. Once this goes down the tracks, the train can't stop. I mean, you might be able to get some help for yourself in the legal process, but there's nothing I can do to help you. Right?
He's got no empathy. Somebody told you a 14-year-old girl is there and she's open to the idea of sex. Those are the kinds of comments that the focus needs to be on. It came from his mouth, a 14-year-old girl who is open to the idea of sex. Let that sink in. Chris Hansen is saying that there are 14-year-old girls that are open to the idea of sex, and not just open to the idea of sex, but sex with a random adult stranger that they find online. Let that sink in. The odds of that ever happening is like 0%, because that's just not possible. 14-year-old girls are not open to the idea of sex with random strangers they can find online. That is a sick, twisted fantasy that this man, Chris Hansen, created. And he has convinced the public to share this fantasy with him. And this needs to stop. And he needs to be called out on this BS.
You got told at least 5 times that she was 14. You hit on the dangers of her being 14, the dangers of meeting here at 14. You didn't want to come to her house because it was dangerous. Yeah, we had that conversation.
Yeah, because I thought
but 5 times she said.
she asked for money.
So he mentions that he was told 5 times. What happens after that? Does the decoy, I'm only 14. And Ferris may say, well, I don't know. I don't believe that you're 14. Does the decoy carry on with more coercion?
What happens and what they're deliberately not talking about is, they're claiming I'm 14, and then it's followed up by behavior that shows they are very sexually turned on by announcing that they are 14.
Right, and that's some of my question. They may have said, hey, I'm only 14. Oh, that's bad news. Oh, but wouldn't it be good for you? Or, whatever their response is.
What else are we going to do? And bring condoms so they're announcing they're 14, but they're putting that together with I'm very sexually turned on by telling you that I'm 14 and ooh, I like it that you're 49. And when are you coming over? I'm going to get in the shower now. Here's my address. Please bring condoms. That's what they're leaving out. And that's how these cases are won, by omitting important facts like that, keeping the focus off of that. It does not matter how many times she says she was 14. She could have said she was 5 years old or 6 years old. The point is he saw the face of an adult woman and he witnessed the behavior of an adult sex freak. And not that there's anything wrong with being a sex freak if you're an adult. There's just no such thing as being a sex freak, when you're 14 years old or 13-year-old. Not even for boys, much less girls, much less anybody who has been sexually abused. And so Chris Hansen has a wild fantasy about that.
Yeah, so the detectives and the decoy, instead of ending the conversation when he says, oh, I don't want a 14-year-old, they entice and manipulate and coerce even more at that point.
Right. And just like they say, oh, when she says she was 14, you should have stopped the conversation, left it alone. Well, no, Chris Hansen, when he's telling you, I knew this was not a 14-year-old, I didn't believe this was a 14-year-old, then you need to stop the conversation, let him go and let him be, because he clearly did not believe this was a 14-year-old. And very logically so. He saw an adult woman on video chat. He saw the behavior of an adult woman who liked to pretend to be a sex freak. And then he arrived there and saw the same adult woman that he was shown through video chat. So at that point, Chris Hansen, you are the one that needs to stop the conversation and let this man go, because this has absolutely nothing to do with you trying to protect children.
And another thing that I want to mention, it's common in these sting operations. They seem to think that the more times they say that they're 14 or whatever age, that makes it more believable. But if you're having a conversation with someone, especially, in a dating context, and they keep bringing up their age randomly, it makes you wonder what is going on here. This is odd behavior. Why are they? Right. It basically means that they are definitely not 14 if they've said it 5 times.
Exactly. Exactly.
Makes it less believable every time they say it.
And they are acting
especially
like
when they carry on with the coercing and the manipulation and playing, and the adult play that they give after that.
A real 14-year-old would not be announcing that she's 14 years old. If she's trying to hook up with someone online, which would never be happening, she might be flirting, but she's definitely not going to be pushing sex and then announcing that she's 14 and then acting like she's very sexually turned on by that. That is a behavior of someone who is role playing for sexual purposes. So he had
I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but when I have a thought that comes to my head, if I don't jump in, it's just going to go away. Another thing with men and women on these, hookup and adult sites, if someone's being that difficult, they're going to move on. They're not going to keep coercing and manipulating. If someone says, I don't believe what you're telling me, and I don't like what you're telling me, that block is always available on those different dating apps. On one of these dating apps or a role play, scenario or a kink scenario, if one or the other in the conversation is being difficult and not wanting to play the game that they're trying to play, or maybe saying things that are uncomfortable for the other one, they're going to get ghosted. They're going to be blocked. The conversation is going to end. They're not going to come back and keep manipulating and coercing the person to carry on the conversation. They want these things to be easy and quick in these dating apps.
Yeah, and when it's clear that, Ferris is not the one trying to manipulate or coerce anything, it was their job to stop the conversation, let it be, and move on. This man is clearly not looking for a minor to exploit. He was looking for an adult.
And I think in the real world, a real one would have ended the conversation.
Oh, yeah, I've heard that many times too, because a real one knows that, the person, they want to exploit someone who's vulnerable. This person is clearly not vulnerable. This person is very confident, mature, experienced in sex, even though they claim to be a virgin. They sure don't, they're showing that they have sexual maturity and sexual experience and sexual confidence. A real predator does the grooming, they know they want to groom, they want to manipulate, they want to control the conversation. They would recognize this as this is not a real minor and they would move on. So when they say, oh, you're supposed to move on, well, that's what a real predator would do, because a real predator would not be confused about this. A real predator would know this is a setup. This is definitely not a minor, because minors don't look for sex with random adult male strangers. So I'm moving on. So really, they're letting the predators go. That's probably a better way to identify real predators, Chris Hansen, instead of, attacking the submissive men who give in to what this imaginary creature you created. These men are just giving in to what the pretend minor is wanting them to do, is wanting them to say. And of course, it's not a real minor; it's a pretend minor. It's a role play. What the adult who is role playing, pretending to be a role minor, or sorry, pretending to be a minor, they are the men are submitting to that. They're just trying to please the other person, which shows they are the complete opposite of a predator.
What do you say to other men who may be thinking about coming over to visit a girl who's underage?
I mean, not only about underage, about any this website.
Don't blame the website, blame yourself.
Of course,
Blame Chris Hansen.
Yeah, I think Ferris actually kind of puts the blame in the right spot, because there is kind of a lack of security on these websites, so you don't really know who you're going to meet when you meet up with someone online.
He's saying, don't trust don't trust who you meet on these websites, because, and he said it earlier, like, I think he probably said 99%, or it was a high percentage of people on there are not who they claim to be. And he said there are a lot of scammers on there. There are a lot of people trying to scam you. And that's another reason why a lot of these guys continue the conversation, because it's hard to get an actual person chatting with you, because a lot of them are bots and scammers and trying to scam you and asking for money and credit card info and this and that. And so Chris Hansen and the vigilante groups and law enforcement that are exploiting that these men are easy to keep them going in conversation, because it's hard to even find these conversations. And so they're exploiting everybody all around. And like I said, it doesn't matter how many times they claim to be 14. That's all theater. That's all, he was told she was 14, and so he knew. No, he knew there was something really off about this. And
right. That's what Ferris was saying. It's not saying that, don't go to meet 14-year-old girls online, because he's clearly holding his line here that he didn't think he was meeting a 14-year-old girl. Right. It's basically, don't fall for scams online is basically what he was saying.
Which is exactly what this is.
Right. Which is, this is a scam, just like any of the,
Except
scams coming from Nigeria or India, any other place,
But with this scam, they don't just take your money, they take your life.
Exactly.
And destroy your family.
Yeah. And then they get the money, but it's from the federal government usually. So, and clicks, of course.
Here's a guy who's driving a car, potentially with somebody who's 14, 15 years old, alone, and that they could become a target because of his exposure to these people.
That means he has the opportunity to meet children, maybe even with their parents. You see, we've seen people develop relationships with parents to have sex with children.
Basically what he's saying is that Uber drivers are actually pedophiles that are driving around and picking up children that are taking Ubers by themselves.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. They're picking up minors. These guys are total actors. Or if they're there with their parents, pedophiles, they friend the parents. So Uber drivers, if a parent gets in with a 14 or 15-year-old child into the Uber, this Uber pedophile driver is going to, friend the parent so that then they can have access to the child. Yeah, these guys are totally lost in fantasy world. They're actors.
Yeah, that's just a crazy thing to say.
Now, what we aren't talking about is the ones that once they do this and they start to come down from, I'll call this a sexual deviant rush. They go, oh my gosh, what have I done? And there's a live witness here. And then we see murder to cover up their crimes.
Wow.
That happens as well.
That's frightening.
It is frightening.
It's also completely detached from reality. Yeah, it's terrifying that he thinks that, assuming he even does.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. If you cannot distinguish between the fantasies in your head that you have created about this and reality, then you are the one who poses a real danger to children and to the public. This is insane. Yeah. Absolutely insane. You know what's really funny about this too? He was not an Uber driver. That was not his real job. I don't know if he did that before, but that was not his real job. I'm glad he didn't tell him what the real job was. But I find this comical because they've created a whole narrative around that. The Uber driver, and that wasn't even his actual job.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm not
Well,
going to
that
say
wasn't his career, but I think he said he was doing it temporarily while he was waiting for another job.
I don't know if that's true because I think the job he had been at for a while, unless he was doing multiple jobs. I don't know, but I think he just kind of he might have maybe been doing it on the side or done it before, but that was not the job he had. He had been at for years. They absolutely loved him. His boss, wanted to be a character witness for him. They knew that there's no way he did this. They knew there's something wrong with what these people did to Ferris. Everybody who knows him, he's a really great guy. Everybody who knows him knows that absolutely not true because they've known him forever. When he says check my record or whatever, it's true. I know one of his family members. All of it was true. This Ferris was being honest. These two psychos here, they're actors. And I call them psychos because to me their behavior shows that they are. They can be mad about it or whatever, but they created a whole narrative around, sexualizing children, and then they throw in they throw in real stuff, to kind of blur the lines. Oh, they moved in with the mother to have, sexual access to the children. Yeah, that's true. That does happen. But none of those children ever go online looking for random strangers to have sex with them. Shady Grady and Chris Hansen, that's just a wild sexual fantasies you guys have created about children, and then you gaslight everybody with them, and you want for everybody to share that sexual fantasy with you. Well, I'm sorry, but we don't. And Ferris is a very normal person, and that's why this was not normal to him. That's why he was incredibly confused by it, just like any other normal human being would have been. He might have other issues, but he is definitely not a pedophile or a predator or even close to being that. So shame on you, men, for doing what you did. You are the ones that pose a real danger to the public.
Yeah. I am kind of curious to see what the comments have to say, kind of who's in the comment section watching this stuff. Because it's kind of a strange thing for people to watch, honestly. But
well, people enjoy, this is fantasy, right? It's entertainment. Yeah. People enjoy that until you know the dark truth behind it.
I don't know. I love that the ones that get the free episodes are the ones who want to hide the most. Like, what does that even mean? It's just, yeah.
Me not going to watch any more of these episodes while working. Chris, then why are you here? You know how this looks, right? So they're making fun of it. And yeah, so it's entertainment for them.
Yeah, this is just entertainment. Yeah.
Oh, look at this. It touched my heart when Chris said 14 is a baby. Like that's his fatherly side talking. No, Chris Hansen, the real predator, did not say that. Ferris said that. Ferris was pointing out that 14 is a baby, and that's how he knew this was not a 14-year-old, because this was not a baby that he saw. This was an adult, a fully grown woman he saw. So yeah, that's funny how they changed that and said Chris Hansen said 14 was a baby.
Yeah. This comment actually, I thought this was kind of funny too. The people in the back with their snack buffet just casually hanging out while this guy is panicking. Yeah. I thought that was bizarre. Yeah, there was literally like a buffet going on in the background.
Yeah, to them, this is like whatever. They don't care. They're ruining someone's life. They're not saving or protecting children. They're lying about it. They're just making a show.
They're distancing themselves from the situation.
They're just making a show. That's all they care about. Meanwhile, they're all enabling and protecting the real predator who's caused a lot of real harm to a lot of real people, Chris Hansen.
Yeah, and I think this comment actually is pretty revealing about how this works. Sad piano music when he's worried about his family, the horror music with the There's Something You Need to Know, 10 out of 10 production. And that's what this is. This is a production. It's not reality.
It's theater.
Yes, it's totally just a show.
That's all it's meant to be, at the cost of real lives. And like I said, this man was ripped away from his special needs child, and that has really affected them. That's really affected that his daughter. And nobody cares about that. Do you think Chris Hansen cares about that? I mean, we care about that. Most
he doesn't.
Normal people and good people care about it. But Chris Hansen only cares about his show and the money and, bringing to life his sexual fantasies, exploiting other people.
And something I do have to throw in, if this was someone that really molested a 14-year-old, really, in real life, instead of this manufactured script and exculpatory evidence kept out of the story, if this was someone really doing this, we would be criticizing it. We would be, we wouldn't be supporting it if it was all real and honest. But the problem here is none of this is real and honest.
Yeah. That's right. And if it were a real person, those people usually get lesser sentences. The ones that have done the real stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, if you look at actual cases of actual predators, something we might do at some point, it doesn't look anything like these entrapment schemes. It's totally different, and we don't support actual predators and that kind of thing. Obviously,
no, of course not. We are for protecting children, and that's especially why we have a problem with this, because this is taken away from that. This is being used as a distraction from that. And it's actually helping protect the real predators, because while everybody's focused on this, these fantasies that sick, twisted men like Chris Hansen are using, to play out their own sexual fantasies about minors, real minors are being preyed on online, by real predators who pose as minors and pretend to be minors to befriend those minors and talk to them. A real predator is not going on there talking to a 14-year-old about how he wants to lick her up and down and kiss her all over her body or whatever, and can I come over now? That's not what real predators do. This was, when he was reading the sexual conversation, that's a script that men use when they go on these adult hookup sites. This is sexual fantasy talk. They're doing that. They're putting that out there to try to make the man look like a monster. Look at these sexual things he was saying. That's a script he's probably used over and over again for when he goes on these adult hookup sites. You just pull up your script and you read it. Oh, yes, I want to kiss you all over. I want to make out. Yeah, we'll do oral sex. We'll do whatever. If you're familiar with these websites and the community who uses these websites to engage other like-minded consensual adults in fantasy sexual conversations, that's how those conversations go. Okay. So, I mean, some people may not like hearing that stuff, but it's very normal to a lot of people. And Chris Hansen and other real predators like him are exploiting that. And then they use that to try to make them sound like, oh, he was talking to a child like this. No, he was not talking to a child like that. And that would have never been a real child, because this person was engaging him in that conversation.
Right, and the real predators and the groomers don't go to adult dating sites. They go to the games where the real kids go.
Yeah, you go to where you expect to find minors, and you look for the vulnerable ones that you can manipulate and groom and entice and all that. And they're not going to talk to them about, I want to come meet you to do these dirty things with you. Those minors would block them and, move on and find friends to talk to. They're not going to say, oh, yes, please come over. Let me shower first. Those are adults who are role playing, and that's what the public needs to be made aware about this.
Hey, again, this is Em. I'd like to thank you all for joining us for this little experiment, and would like to suggest you check out ICAC Unpacked, Lady Justice Myth blog, Cage, that's CAGE, that's Citizens Against Government Entrapment. Yeah, and please join for more. Like, subscribe, leave some comments. Thanks again, A. Thanks, C. I look forward to doing more.
Thank you, M. And thank you guys for listening. And remember, keep singing back.